You can't make policy when you're looking straight ahead, when you're working your jaws, when you're refusing to look at each other, when you're rolling your eyes, when you're curling your lips, and all your other various behaviors. I'm sorry to do this. It makes me sad. Please believe me. But I am begging you. You can't make policy when you're looking straight ahead, when you're working your jaws, when you're refusing to look at each other, when you're rolling your eyes, when you're curling your lips, and all your other various behaviors. I'm sorry to do this. It makes me sad. Please believe me. But I am begging you.
Welcome to the Citizens Reporter. I'm the host and editor, Diana Longry. Thank you for tuning in. The Citizens Reporter is brought to you this evening from the SCC studios out of White Bear Lake. And we are happy that you're watching our program. It is a live program, so we encourage you to call in with any questions or comments that you may have for us this evening. We want to invite you to the table. Now, this evening we have Mr. Waters with us and Mr. Mark Bradley, who are going to help with this evening's news. We have, of course, some of the pertinent things that have happened in the Pioneer Press that Mr. Bradley would like to cover, but we have a lot of film footage on different things that have been going on in Maplewood that we need to cover tonight. So we're going to have a lot of film footage, and we're going to really analyze some of that stuff. So anyway, so I want to welcome both the guys on the program.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes, and so Mark, why don't we get started with a couple of things you got there, and we'll just keep on rolling through the news.
Sounds good. In fact, what we should really start with, something that I think will be irrelevant to the people of Maplewood, because we've discussed it for a long period of time, and that happens to be in the Saturday Star Tribune. It's talking about surge in gun owner crowds, state ranges. Now remember, we've been talking about that we have a range on the south end of Maplewood that's being managed by the St. Paul Police Department. And there's supposed to be a federal and state laws that are supposed to be included in it. And it's intriguing that right now they're saying that there is not enough ranges available for use. And that they're building more ranges right now across the whole state. And what we're really looking at is that the demand is outstripping, and they're saying any ranges are important to gain more of the novices out there to get trained with the weapons, because everybody wants to shoot a weapon now.
Well, and what this article is addressing is that the state has various gun ranges, and so that there's this surge of gun owners, private gun owners, who are going to these ranges trying to be able to use them for practice. And of course, they could go out to the various gun ranges, like Harris, Minnesota has a gun range. I believe the Oakdale, I think, still has one. That's a private gun range. But there again, for the most part, if you want to go out to a gun range, it's really quite a ways out. I think maybe there's one in White Bear Lake or in the White Bear Lake Township, maybe, or there used to be.
White Bear Lake Township, there used to be the gun club up there.
Yep, and so that's really kind of what this is about, that pressure on the gun ranges. Okay, well, interesting. We'll have to see how that works out.
And then on the bottom there, we have another deal where a Falcone, who happens to be one of those dealers that was causing us all the problems of taking and investing our stocks and then taking the money and doing other things with it. Well, he got caught. And now the question is, and I think it's an important question to consider here, why is it that we haven't seen anybody really going to jail for a long period of time of any of these wealthy investor groups?
Oh, that's an easy answer. Because they got money, they got power, they got attorneys, and they got the politicians. That's why.
You mean this, our judicial system is not fair and equal?
No, they haven't been brought there yet.
Oh, that's it.
Because of all these other factors.
Oh, that's it.
That's right. So that's why.
So, but maybe in about 10 to 20 years, when they...
it won't even be then.
Well, I mean,
the people
they
in
might
power
die in 15, and they might do it after they're dead. I mean, they're going after Polad's cash rate now for the twins, and his kids are already saying, no, the federal and the state have diagnosed how much the twins were worth. They weren't worth anything close to that, even though we do see the Rangers were supposed to be worth massive amounts of money.
Right, well, just wait till the day when they're looking to sell them and sell the team, then suddenly it will be worth 3 times as much as they claim today. So,
right.
What's next on the list?
So then we go to St. Paul Saints fill ballpark gap. Now, it's intriguing that here the city of St. Paul has yet to vote once on any of the financing for the Saints. And I really like the Saints as a team. But to be honest, if anybody's been watching this show, they know how I feel about the Saints ballpark. I feel that it's in the wrong place at the wrong time with a lot of expense. And now the cost of cleaning up down in Lower Town has gotten so prohibitively expensive. The Saints are going to have to come up with some of that $8 million in cleanup costs.
They did. They came up with $1 million, and the remaining $7 million is coming up from the St. Paul taxpayer through a special fund.
Yeah, there
yeah,
you go.
But where's that special fund? I thought that they didn't have any money.
Well, but here's the thing. What I found fascinating about this is that, remember last week or the week before, I mentioned that there was on the St. Paul public access channels that there's the little video and the news press conference about the Saints and all.
Right.
Well, of course, that was all held before this public hearing on the stadium itself. So here they've got their big promo going on before they've even had the public hearing.
Right.
Done deal. But I do understand that what I heard from one individual, that there may be an opportunity under the St. Paul Charter that if there are St. Paul residents out there that are up in arms, that they actually have an opportunity that they may be able to circulate a petition under their charter, and they may actually have some input into whether or not they should be able to fund it or not.
But I think
I think maybe that can be the next thing, is you could find out some of those citizens, see if they want to go start a petition.
Well, I'd like to see them give us a call or come on our show.
Yeah, there you go.
But more importantly, I think that it's already, you're seeing how your government works. It's and I was talking to Mr. Joe Waters here earlier about that. I kind of had this conspiracy mentality. And I feel that way with this because they've already started to tear down the Tony building. Remember 4 weeks ago, or about a month and a half ago, they said, well, we may have to, but they hadn't even had hearings on it. I don't think they ever took an official vote on it of the St. Paul Council.
Well, now we also, though, know that we've been watching North St. Paul Council a little bit lately.
Oh, yeah.
And it appears that there's actions that some of the members are in tune with that there was never any vote on. Same way with Maplewood Council. It seems like that over the last couple of years has been the MO.
You mean like the $7 million spent on the Savannah and then finding that we're going to be putting low-interest housing
there was a vote on that, though.
Oh, I know, but on the low-interest housing was what I was referring to.
Let's go on to the next article
Okay.
here. We have, because we have so much we need to cover
Right,
tonight.
and number 4 on our hit list happens to be talking about Shakopee. Is working to land Shutterfly, remember? And that's why I was relating it to there. So I was kind of transitioning this over to it. What the deal is I had gone to the city council about 4 weeks ago. I was supposed to, 2 weeks ago.
Maplewood City Council?
The Maplewood City Council, 2 weeks ago, I should say. And I was supposed to be there this last Monday. And I got to doing some stuff for SCC TV and lost track of time, so I didn't make it to it. But the fact is that I was making the contention that we put all this money into that property, and here is Shakopee bidding for getting some long-term job employment in their city. And why aren't we fighting for the same thing in Maplewood, especially since we have now this property we've invested that $7 million in. And maybe this would be a good thing for something like Shutterfly. Now, I also have to add, though, remember I said that conspiracy mentality I was bringing up earlier? I'm still trying to point to that mentality because of, according to this article, it's the state's also throwing money at Shutterfly. So it looks like it's a concerted effort.
How many acres of land would they need in an assemblage for this manufacturing?
Well, it's already the warehouse has already been constructed, I guess, and by all of to be surprised, the same contractor that I believe is doing the Minneapolis Stadium and the Saints Stadium.
Oh, okay, Ryan Construction.
Ryan Construction,
okay.
yep.
So do we have an idea though about how many acres of land
It's
would
supposed
be
to be,
required for something
I
like
believe it
this?
was like 5 acres.
So that's my question then, because you see, then if we know that this type of production and jobs production would take 5 acres of land, then we can say, okay, where in Maplewood do we have 5 acres of land that can be assembled with the proper zoning, the proper land use,
Right.
and then from there go and market it to the appropriate people and industries who would want to come to Maplewood and bring those kind of jobs here.
Right off the top of my head, I don't think we have anything like that. And that part of the problem is Shakopee's got a lot of open land.
That's true.
We don't have a lot of open land. And the land, in order to get 5 acres for something like that, we'd have to do a lot of rezoning in this city because areas that should have been left for industrial development end up being turned into houses.
Yep, that's
so
true.
we in order for Maplewood to do something like that, they would, we have the what is now the Housing and Business Economic Development Committee. They need to actually go out and identify certain areas within the city to allow a shutterbug to come in, or shutterfly to come in.
Right.
And I think part of the problem, like I said, Shakopee's got a lot of open land. We don't. We really don't have a strategy.
Well,
Right,
technically we do have a lot of open land, but we haven't, like you said, done the proper planning on it.
And I think that Joe has a good point in that many of the properties that may have been appropriate, through the years, that the light industrial has been zoned out of Maplewood.
Right.
And so other things have gone there, like housing.
Exactly.
Because it's so easy, it's much easier to put housing development into a parcel of land than it is to actually maybe do more commercial development, I think.
Right. But you got to also realize the biggest issue I have with that is the fact that when we're talking about it, then we have to talk about that to be an honest council, and this is a very dishonest council to me, and I'm going to say it straight
Well,
up.
I'll say it this way.
Well, not the whole thing.
Council.
Not the whole thing. But
yeah, there's 2 members on there. There's 3 members on there. 2 for sure.
Right.
That don't, we talked about this at the beginning of the show.
Right.
That, should be listening to citizens, and the person that we saw at the beginning of the show does not listen to citizens.
But
Yeah,
the
Captain
original
Juenemann,
council, let's put it that way, because we've got new members have come on, so I'm not aiming at them, and they haven't done anything here.
But we have to always remember, it is a Plan B city.
Right.
And it isn't necessarily the council. I mean, in part it is. They are complicit. but they are not the ones who are making the big plans. As much as top administrators might say that we are taking the direction of the council, they are not taking the direction of the council. They are giving the direction to the council, and the council just goes along willy-nilly without listening to the citizens. I mean, the people who are running City Hall are the ones who come up with the big plans, because in a Plan B city, it's very easy for council members to just sit back and just let the world go by and just rubber stamp stuff. I mean, that's the way it works.
Well, really, just we're kind of getting off subject,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you even have it in a charter city.
Yes.
You have it in Minneapolis with a council. You have 13 ward members, and you got a mayor.
Yes.
Right.
And you've got 13. You basically have 13 mayors. Only one of them is elected citywide. The other 13 are elected by districts, and they're going in saying, do this, do this, do this. You know,
Yeah.
so it's not just a Plan B city. It's just a lack of councils doing their due diligence and doing their
And
government.
that's what I was trying to say about the dishonesty of the old council, because the fact is that I was trying to make the point that they haven't taken and said, okay, what is our plan for the future? Have they really ever given the city the opportunity to see what their vision is? I mean, that's
citizens, right, yes.
to the public,
Right,
yes, as a whole. These councilmen and even if we're talking about that we're the employees of the city, they're supposed to be working in conjunction with each other, and we should have a general plan that then does free up land like this when we do have it sitting open. I mean, we got the harvest fields that are there that are baseball fields now, that could be worked into a plan, and we've got other fields like over, like I said, in the savannah in there. What we have to do is really take and say, what is our long-term plan? Do we want to keep it as a park? Do we want to do it as housing? But if we're doing it as housing, we need the tax base.
You can't do the Savannah as housing. You cannot,
Well, I
because
understand
it was purchased with referendum money. So, I mean, you just can't go there. But let's take a look at that next article, and
This is the last one here that I have.
Good, okay.
Which is like I said, I was touching them fast and there, but I just wanted to make that point that we have to ask those right questions of our council. And this one has to do with Southwest is looking at that light rail transit, and that's a big issue now. As everybody's now talking about, once the dam broke, now it's everybody's going after. Let's bring in more of these trolleys and more of these light transit. And in the case of this one, it's going up and up in cost in the Southwest because they're going to be using railroad line. And then remember, we've talked about this for years, that I think it's a good idea to look at those lines, but we should have developed it as a total plan from the very start, instead of trying to now play against one part of the city, against another part of the city, against also major corporations.
Yeah, exactly.
And it seems like that's what we're doing here.
Well, one of the reasons why you're seeing costs go up, and I haven't read that article, but I can almost bet you it has to do with the railroads themselves. They see this as a cash cow, because that was one of the problems with the North Star, is that Burlington Northern and a few other railroads saw this as a potential cash cow, so they're saying, well, we need to upgrade our tracks, so forth. This is why it's going to cost you so much.
Well,
and because they have the right-of-way.
Right.
You know, that's their right-of-way, and so if you want to use their right-of-way, you got to pay a price.
But the bigger cost was actually in, again, poor planning. The PPP, I would say. But we won't go into that part of it. But it's poor planning. And in this case, what the planning didn't take into consideration is that you have to have parking areas and you have to have ramps and all that. And you're right about access. But it wasn't the major cost. It's actually a lot of other things that they should have had in the very beginning. And they kind of get us onto the road, and we're two miles past quitting before we ever started, before they get us to the point where now we say, well, now we're so far as in for a penny, in for a dime.
Right. You can hardly pull out now. We've gone so far.
Right.
In other words, that's right. Well, we have quite a bit of, as I promised, information coming out of Maplewood. And we're going to start off first with a clip from Maplewood. And so is the edit booth ready? Okay, let's go take a look at our first clip.
Let's get rolling.
It is the recommendation to include 595 95-gallon carts 9,452 65-gallon carts, and 2,728 32-gallon carts. There are some individuals that will request a 95-gallon cart. Many people consider this to be too big, too unwieldy for their recyclables, so I would expect that the majority of your folks will request a 65-gallon cart. This is especially true because Maplewood has the luxury of every week recycling. And a 65-gallon cart and the every other week recycling has been shown in other places to be really where the sweet spot is for your customers and their convenience and their ability to store carts. 2 95-gallon carts sometimes don't fit well in a garage. The estimated price for the carts, realizing the RFID installation to those carts and the RFID units themselves are included in the bid package, would be $471,116 with no taxes or freight included in that estimate. Tennis has a proposal for distribution and maintenance. It is a one-time cost, and that brings a total cost of $524,132.55. Should the RFID tags be installed in the recycling carts at the time of purchase? These carts would be a long-term purchase for the city. I thoroughly expect that they will be in use for the next 12 to 18.
So this is from July 22nd, and I think it was from the workshop,
It was the
correct?
workshop, correct.
It was a Maplewood workshop where they're talking about buying more carts. The city of Maplewood is thinking about buying more carts for recycling now. And gosh, did I hear that number right? $500,000?
Yeah, you heard it right. Yeah, you heard it exactly right. $500,000 for another cart. That's only going to last 12 to 15 years. Wow. Another $500,000, and they're talking about potentially a 75-cent surcharge on your bill to pay for the carts.
And then the installation is supposed to be extra because they didn't plan on that.
That includes installation.
I meant of the chip.
I think the 75 cents included the chip.
Yeah, and
Oh,
but
okay.
one thing is that they actually had tennis at this workshop, and Bob Cardinal did ask Mr. Tennis, as a result of Maplewood going to single hauler trash collection and giving the entire city contract there to Allied, approximately how many customers did he lose? And he said it was, I think it was over 4,000.
I heard 49,000,
Yep.
4,900 households.
And that's a lot. So then they asked him, well, like how many carts then do you have like left extra on hand? And, you know, it's about as many as the number of customers he lost.
Exactly.
And think about how easy it would be. And see, Tennis has told the city that, first of all, Maplewood is one of the last of the communities to for recycling to go to carts that can be picked up by the automated arms.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than having these little bins you got to cart around by hand. And Tennis has said that the amount of recycling goes up. Keep in mind, Maplewood a year ago was told that out of the 16 communities that they keep recycling data on, that Maplewood is dead last.
Dead last.
And so this is actually going to carts would actually increase our recycling in Maplewood, which is probably a very good thing. But here's the other thing. We know that there's only like about 10,000 households in Maplewood. If Tennis has 5,000 or so carts that are just not being used, well, then you only really have a difference of 5,000 carts, and maybe there's other carts that can be used from what we've got. All you got to do is stick a sticker on them that says recycling, right?
Or just give it a different color.
There, yeah.
That's all you need to do, yeah. I mean, you have the black one for your garbage, and maybe you get a brown one for recycling. Or you
just
get a
take
red
a
one.
piece of tape and run it around, a colored piece of tape, to show that that's the recycle bin.
That could be possibly.
And see how easy that would be. These are solutions that are very easy, that don't involve bonding for another $500,000 worth of, well,
But keep in mind, you might have that poor, lonely contractor out there who may want to bid on the job and doesn't have the truck with the arm, you know, so the city will be the white knight and come out and say, we'll provide you the carts for you, you know. That's the reason why they want to buy the carts, because they want to control the situation.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the funny
Yes.
part I'm concerned on is that because of I've been catching, because tennis has sent out information since since they took over the recycling, on recycling and what is allowed, including I believe now many of the foam products are able to be tossed into recycling along with most of your plastics. I think the only thing they're not taking is the lightweight plastic bags that you can actually take over to like Rainbow and drop them off there. But, you know, there's so much that can be recycled now that there's an expectation almost that you're going to be having more in the recycling bins and more pickup from tennis in the near future than you're going to be from the trash collector at Allied, who's been fighting for this and playing their games. But I'll tell you, if it keeps going the way I see it, it looks like the trash bins are going to go smaller and smaller as we could put more and more into the recycling bins.
Right.
You know, I'm kind of looking at, I kind of see on the screen here, it says another attack on tennis trash hauling. To me, it's just an attack on the consumer and free enterprise.
That's right.
Because I know my trash needs far better than anybody in that environmental commission or in that city council. And as far as I'm concerned, what they ought to do is just leave everything what the recycling, leave everything is for about another year or so. This contract's going to come up for renewal in what, 2017?
Right.
Okay, right around 2015. You'll have a couple of years under your belt to see how this thing is going. Take a real hard look at that, and then take honest-to-God citizen input. If the citizen says, I don't like it, regardless if it's going well, take that in consideration. So when the contract comes up in 2017, you renew both recycling and the trash bin contract, if that's the case, and see, what am I trying to say? Well, you need to look at how it's working now before you jump into this next cycle, obstacle, whatever you want. Rather than spending $500,000 on more carts, see how it's working now. If it's working then potentially look at buying more carts. But I guess, to me, it's kind of like we need to just slow down. Because to me, it's like, how can we jam this thing down our throat before certain people leave office?
Right. It's almost like they want to make sure it is totally sealed up.
Right.
So that it can never be reanalyzed. And I think your point is well taken, is that once you've gone through, whether or not if it's this process or any other process, you have to take then time to do that analysis, to do the benchmarking, to figure out, did it work the way you wanted it to? Is it not working the way you wanted it to? Go ahead.
You know, when you talk about benchmarking, okay, let's look at other cities that have some sort of organized or municipal collection. And the reason why I say organized, obviously, because they have one trash hauler, or municipal. The city of Minneapolis has a municipal trash hauler, but I think they're going through some issues on contracting and so forth. There's other cities that have organized trash collection. What they really should be doing is saying, okay, what is Stillwater doing? What is Roseville doing? What is Arden Hills, Falcon Heights? What are these cities doing? Then bring in the customer's input. Maybe I only need a small trash bin for basic trash and a small trash bin for recycling. You may need something bigger. You may need something. You may need the 65. You may need the 95-footer. You may need the 65-gallon one. But let's talk about spring. When I don't own a house anymore, but when I'm doing yard waste, I was just talking to someone recently, and they said, in the springtime, everybody rakes their stuff into the curbs, and then the city comes along and sweeps all that stuff up.
Right.
There's another, you may want to have, say, certain times in the spring, on these days we are going to pick up yard waste. I don't see that in the current contract at all. In the same way in the fall. When I did sell my house, I had an old refrigerator or freezer I had to get rid of. I ended up giving it to my neighbor, who gave it to his son, who lives in Stillwater, who then put it on the curb, and they came and picked it up. That's how you actually figure out what the customer wants. They were so focused on selling price. Oh, we got you a 65-gallon at $9, 65 or 95-gallon trash foam at $9 per month. Price is fine, but where's the service?
Right.
It's just like buying a car. Well, here's a set of wheels. Oh, by the way, you got to pedal it yourself. Well, that's not the type of wheels I want.
Well, see, but you have to remember, they really started out with a number of different sales pitches to try to figure out which one they thought was going to have the most traction.
Oh, they were doing market testing.
Yes, you know what, one week they would say the reason we're doing this is because of this reason. Well, that didn't really go over so well, so they would try another reason, and then a different reason, and then eventually they came to the conclusion that they weren't going to sell it on so many of these different concepts that really the only one they could maybe really sell it on was price. And that, you know, who would want to turn down having a lower price? You'd have to be nuts. But you see, that talks about only price and not talking about services, features. I mean, I used to be in sales. I used to sell a product that had a higher price point than what my competitor had. But you see, we had services, we had features.
Features and benefits.
That's right. That was for our customers that they appreciated. It wasn't necessarily the price. It was what we had to offer. And that is something, and also that choice of deciding what you want. And when in reality, their ultimate real goal that they have underneath all this, which they really don't want to identify and to talk about, is that they really want to move everybody to zero waste, which goes exactly to your point, Bradley, is that zero waste, that if suddenly we can recycle everything, now you are at zero waste. But by telling everybody that if you don't select your trash can, we're going to give you the largest one, that's contrary to that philosophy of zero waste.
Right.
So they're working against each other. Now, what if, say if you were recycling with those little bins and that's why we had to go to recycling every week, think about the wear and tear on the roads from having the recycling trucks going up and down every week. If you have a recycling bin that's 65 gallons, maybe the recycling guy only has to come by once every 2 weeks. But what if you're able to put almost all of your stuff you're throwing out into the recycle bin, very little into your trash bin, and then your trash guy only has to come once every 2 weeks?
And that's my
what
point.
if it gets switched? Is the city going to be able to manage a schedule that says to the trash guy, you only go to these certain houses every other week, and you go to the recycling guy and tells him you go to these houses every week or every other? Eventually there's going to be some changing around there, and they haven't prepared for that. They do not have a dispatch system in the least bit that accommodates what the real needs are going to be of the citizens. And only private business is going to have that dispatch system.
Tennis, before tennis was kicked out of the city, tennis was doing both in my neighborhood at that time, the trash pickup and the recycling. The trash guy would come first, and you could set your watch by it because he'd be there at 10 o'clock. At about 10 after 10, the recycling guy would be right behind him. And they, like you said, they knew what they were doing. We don't have a dispatch system in this city. We have no way. Are we going to hire someone to sit there and watch a computer a screen monitoring someone? I don't think so.
Because you see, it's the private business owner that if he's running his business appropriately, he's the one that's going to want to make sure he has the best efficiencies. And if he's got customers that they know that they have more recyclables than they have disposables, then they're going to have them on the right system, and they're going to have them dispatched properly, and that's the way it will work, much more streamlined.
And the beauty of this, and this is put another plug in for tennis, when tennis was picking up the garbage guy would always go talk to my neighbor for about 10, 15 minutes. And I asked Willie Tennis about that, and he says, it's just getting to talk to our customers so their customers know us and, you know, we know them.
And I was going to say something else about tennis. The thing is that over the years, like I've had tennis in both areas myself, and the one thing that now they're just picking up the recycling, they've sent out leaflets on a regular basis informing of new things that have been added. And this is the type of thing that's going to say, and this is where Willie's growing the business. He grows the business by realizing, by telling you that, yes, you can throw this product. You can put now milk cartons or juice cartons into for recycling, because they're a paper product, even though they're a finished paper product, they can go in now. Or if it's a foamed product. My question, if Willie's listening right now, is he could give me the answer to it. I bet if on these foam packs that are on the bottom of your meats, if we rinse them off, can we throw those in for recycling as well?
I don't know.
I don't know. It's
Question.
another question. But there's another thing for recycling.
Yes, exactly. Well, let's take a look and continue on with some more of our film footage here. Okay. It's on pause, and it'll come on up here pretty quick.
Well, what I was going to say, you know, even though the Willie's
There are
trash...
problems with recycling. The information that is provided for you to administer and fine-tune a program and enhance your education program is quite frankly invaluable. And I would strongly recommend putting the RFID units in place at the time that you purchase the carts. How will the estimated cart costs and the proposed revenue share affect the price that Maplewood charges for recycling services? First, I have to say that at $1.75 per dwelling unit for weekly service, you are almost an order of magnitude below what is charged for other communities. And those communities are all getting every other week service instead of every week service. So the actual dollars that your residents spend on their recycling program is considerably less than residents not only in Ramsey County but in the metro area as a whole. I would expect that approximately, again with my conservative recycling revenue return to you estimate, I would expect that the proposed, that the recycling carts would be an increase.
So one interesting thing about this is when she's talking about what other cities charge, you can't just look at what the charge is. You have to look at, first of all, what goes into it and where does the revenue end up.
That was the question.
Because in Maplewood, when a citizen is paying their recycling charge, few residents realize, they probably think that the entire thing goes to the recycler. And it doesn't. A great portion of it actually goes to City Hall to pay for the city staff who's thinking about recycling. I mean, you know, it helps to pay them for the time they think about it. You know, it's not only a portion of it actually goes to the recycler themselves.
The person is actually doing the work.
Yes, right.
And as we find more uses for the products, we're actually seeing that we can actually have a return on them, which would be lowering the cost. And that's where maybe that's what we're seeing here with the recycler we have, that he's actually doing a better return than some of these other recyclers
Well,
are.
and he has suggested that with the contract that we have that feature built into it, that there is that cost revenue sharing aspect of it, so that way, if there's money to be made, that revenue is being shared. And after all, if he is actually going out there and promoting recycling and getting that recycling percentage up, well, this is his motivation to do so because he gets to share in that revenue.
Right.
Yeah.
But it also is a return to us, and maybe that's why we're looking at a lower cost.
Yeah.
When you mean return to you, you mean return to the city.
Right.
You're not going to see. You're paying the bill. You're not going to see.
Well,
the
you
return.
never know.
Yeah.
They might return us, but we know they usually don't.
It might snow in July too.
That's true.
But the way this year is going, anything.
But I'm
possible.
trying to be as fair as I can be.
You try.
Yes.
Keep trying.
So, and then this idea about, again, the chips in the carts.
I'm a little confused on that.
Yeah, exactly.
What
I don't.
does that have to do with recycling?
Yeah. Are you trying to monitor my recycling? Are you trying to see if I recycle once? What do you need an RFID chip for? I mean, for instance, you go to the Ramsey County Library. There's RFID chips in the book because it's easy for checkout, so they know who's got the book, when it left the building, and when it's due back. I can see that. But I guess even having the RFID chip in the trash barrel, I'm a little lost on that one. what is your ultimate goal of having that chip in there? Why are you so insistent that that chip be on there? That has never been explained to me.
That's exactly right. The data. What's this whole thing about having all this data collection? And
it made more sense when they had the little containers that blew away. And then you had to try to find your own container, and if you didn't, of course, then you had to buy a new one. But the thing is, now we got these big drums that aren't susceptible to a major wind blowing it off your property.
or certainly not going to be easily lost.
Right.
Put it that way.
Exactly.
And one thing that viewers may not realize is that in the contract for recycling, as well as I think even in the contract with Allied, but certainly in the contract for recycling, is that it is required that whoever the recycler is, in this case it's Tennis, but previously it was Eureka, that the requirement is that they have to keep tabs on which houses do not have recycling out, and that they're keeping tabs on all of you folks out there that don't have your little recycling bins out, and they keep tabs on how many times go by before you put one out, or if you ever do. And I found this out by listening to the Environmental and Natural Resources Commission meeting when they were talking about this, wondering when they were going to be getting that report, or if they'd be able to see the report on the who's naughty and who's nice on the recycling list of who's been doing so and who hasn't been doing so. And so, again, you have this collection of data. And what do they do with all this data that they're collecting?
They send it to the federal government down there in Utah. You know, where that guy, what was that guy's name again? Snowden in Russia now?
Yeah, you know.
I mean, maybe that's what it is. This is the newest way of them spying on us in Washington, D.C.
I'm not certain of that, but it makes you wonder about, you know, why it's all being collected.
Yeah.
There you go. So let's take a look at our next clip here.
Could you go ahead and speak into your mic, please?
Sorry. The 75 cents was arrived at with the purchase of the recycling carts, and the total for that purchase was about $450,000, and bond rates were at a lower amount than they are right now. So this purchase itself is higher, and we're not sure about the sales tax issue yet. We're still researching that with the Department of Revenue, because we're not sure if it's exempt from the sales tax or not. If it's not exempt, the total purchase will be more like $450,000 to $460,000 at current bond rates. I don't know exactly where that's going to come out, but the 75 cents wouldn't be sufficient. So to say that we would set it at 55 cents is a little premature right now until we can run more numbers down the line. There will be a deduction for the revenue received. I don't know what those numbers are going to be yet, though.
But we do, Mayor and Council, the recycling fund is a separate fund.
Yep.
And so it's not part of that. And maybe you want to explain how the positive and negative balances work?
Yeah, the recycling fund is an enterprise fund where the revenues, whatever money is collected goes to the recycling fund, and it would go to pay those debt service payments. If the fund were running a positive balance, we would look at reducing fees or rates or charges to users. We have that information available to us, and if it were running a deficit, it would be the opposite. We would have to look at increasing rates. So it's easy for us to see that as the program goes along. But there are a few unknowns right now, and I'm fairly certain the price for the carts, based on the information here, will probably be less than 75 cents, but the 55 is a little premature yet.
Okay. And you've already, my next question was about the taxes, so we're investigating that.
We're investigating.
Other questions? Kathy?
Yeah, these are for Susan, I think.
So this issue about the sales tax, now does that have to do with whether or not if Maplewood is the end user or whether or not the citizen is the end user.
Well, I kind of thought it had to do with the fact that if Maplewood is the end user, they would be taxed. But I'm also kind of learning in this situation, if you're buying something, if the city is buying something in a private enterprise, a private business, or you're offering a service, and you're buying something for that service, and there's a private business that is offering the same service, then the tax would be, then it's a taxable item. I.e., if Maplewood insists on being the trash hauling business, and you've got Tennis, Highland, all the other privately run, privately owned trash haulers out there, since you're competing against them, because the city cannot have an unfair advantage over them, the city would have to be taxed as well. So my belief is, I'm 90% certain on this, my belief is the city's going to have to pay sales tax because they are competing with private haulers.
Mm-hmm. And see, that seems to make sense to me, because otherwise like you said, they're in competition with them.
Right.
And it would be an unfair advantage.
It's like having a business that has does not pay property taxes, and say you've got a store that sells T-shirts, but it's a nonprofit entity, and the building that you own is part of the nonprofit entity, so you don't have to pay property taxes. But yet you got Mark's T-shirt and consignment shop down the street, and he owns his own building, and he's paying property taxes. The nonprofit is at a severe Mark's at a severe disadvantage to the nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
So in that particular sense, the nonprofit's going to have to pay taxes, because otherwise you're giving Mark an unfair advantage, or Mark has an unfair, is
Right.
being at an unfair advantage. What
Right.
I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I was listening there that concerns me is, can they throw other rates onto it and other service charges? Because the fact is that because we are now seeing it is lower than the others, as long as the public isn't aware of what the real return to cost is on it, and if we have, and I think we've got a great recycler in Tennis, but with this operation, they can always throw it back to the operator and say that all the costs are there, and this is a way to kind of funnel some money out, and so we got to be concerned.
Well, and you heard how they indicated that it's an enterprise fund. And unlike some of our other enterprise funds, like the community center, for instance, this one sounds like it's in the plus.
Yes.
And that it's actually doing rather well.
Well, if I force you to pay something that, on one of your bills every month, you'd be in the plus too.
Yeah. There you
Think about it. You're not forced to pay the community center while you pay it indirectly through your property taxes through the city, and then it gets allocated that way. But if you get a water bill that says 75 cents surcharge for recycling, or it's on your electric bill, suddenly it's amazing how what could be in the negative is suddenly in the positive.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good point. I never thought of it quite that way, but no wonder you can make a profit if you have to. If everybody has to contribute to purchase what
if you're constantly in my wallet. And I think one of the investment firms is kind of showing, are you paying the middleman too much, where the middleman is always there taking more and more as things go by. So.
That's right. Well, let's take a look at our next clip.
Thanks.
Rebecca?
Just a few questions and to the council here, talking about all the different usages. And I know last time when we were talking about this, one of them about mine was what plan we're going to go with. And I really think that after the test study that was done showed that we do need to increase our recycling. This will increase it by getting carts. And I look forward to the opportunity of having more people recycle more things in our city. With that being said, I do have issues with the city supplying the recycling carts. I do with the, the bonding rates, the unknowns, as Gail said. And with bonding issues, I know we're not trying to spend a lot in our city, and this to me would be an unneeded expenditure for our city to spend. I believe Tennis Sanitation, and then, you can get up and speak, I suppose, was also willing to supply and has carts, and I think that's the direction our city should go in. I think having carts is a wonderful idea, but us picking up the tab, I don't think that's a smart idea for us to do at this time.
Rebecca?
Just a few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to the council here, just to few questions. And to
Kathy?
The flip side of that is if you have your vendor supply the carts, the rates are higher per month, but the other piece of that is that should you change vendors, that's the time when you can also be paying then again yet a higher rate.
I
Go
wanted
ahead,
to throw in on that.
Yes.
I mean, Rebecca's got it right. Let the person that's got the contract supply the carts. Kathy's basically saying, well, that puts us at a disadvantage. Well, first of all, this is not what I call a high priority item. But I'm also looking at it, more importantly, you've got the private sector that can provide it. Yeah, it's a little bit higher, but what they're figuring their cost is, okay, here's the cart, but I'm going to have to repair it, I'm going to have to maintain the cart. So that's going to come out of my pocket. That's not coming out of the city's pocket. So yes, maybe the city's only charging, for ease of numbers, 10 cents, but I may be charging 15 cents. That extra 5 cents I'm going to set aside so when the carts break down, when the customer says, hey, I got a broken cart, I need another one, I can bring a new one in and take the old one out and fix the old, maybe either fix the old one or trash it and buy another one. That's how the free market works. You put money aside for maintenance of to keep existing inventory up to date.
That's right, but we don't really know if Ms. Juenemann's statement is actually even accurate. That having the private company providing the carts, it would be more expensive than the city to provide them. Because keep in mind, they're all buying them from pretty much the same vendor, which has got probably a very similar price. Now, Tennis has already got nearly 5,000 carts already that are already paid for, and that's
they were paid
part
at
of
a lower cost.
And that's part of the inventory he would be using when he's providing the carts
Right.
himself. He's not providing brand new carts as a whole upfront cost like the city would have to. So the fact that Ms. Juenemann says that, I don't even know what the basis of her statement is. And keep in mind, and voters have to keep this in mind.
The basis of her statement basically is to counteract whatever Rebecca said.
That's exactly right. And both of them are running for Maplewood City Council. They're both up for re-election. So the voters can decide very clearly here. Do you want to go with the council member who says, why can't a private company, the private hauler,
provide the trash
bring the carts to the city, and then you've got Kathy Juenemann saying, oh no, I think the city should do all this bonding and go buy carts. So if you don't know any other issue out there, you could select your council members just based on this issue alone. Buy the carts or not buy the carts by the city. So if you think that the city shouldn't be buying carts, vote Rebecca Cave. If you think the city should buy those carts and get into the cart business, well, then go with Kathy Juenemann.
Well, you got to understand where Kathy's going on this thing, too. She's going with the idea that you have to put a chip on every one of these things. Well, we could put a chip on underneath that 3M tape that we would put on to color that, but we don't have to put chips on it, and unless the federal government is forcing us to keep track of these trash cans.
And they're not. And they're not.
Well, I'm just making the point of what Kathy's saying. I'm not saying this is where I am.
Trust me, the NSA's got better things to do.
You sure?
Than to monitor the trash can at Mark Bradley.
Then why is Kathy so interested in getting those chips on there? That's what I'm asking.
Because next she'll want to be monitoring your phone.
That's it. Now we got the answer. She's an NSA spy.
Whatever.
We're joking, obviously.
Well, so, but the point being, to me, when I heard that statement, the reason why I wanted to stop is because, like I said, Rebecca's got it right. They've got the carts already. They've got the inventory. Why are we spending more money to buy the inventory that somebody already has in stock? And if you're buying it because you want to control the inventory, why don't you buy the existing inventory, which you probably could get at 10 cents on the dollar, and still accomplish what you want.
And the only group that would take and have an advantage with the Juenemann plan is a company like Allied that's coming in has nothing to start out with. Most of these companies that are already picking up in the area, like Tennis and all of the other ones, Poor Richards and all those, they have carts because they have them for their other customers.
And I think Allied has carts too.
I was about to say.
But because they weren't in the area.
I think it's
they were in the area.
I think it's the issue of the control issue.
Right.
That the city wants the control over the process.
And that's what I'm trying to get the point of.
Allied has the carts because when my neighbor moved a year before I did, he gave me, it wasn't a waste management cart. It was a company that Allied had bought.
Right.
And it was a smaller cart.
But see, all of them
So
are
they
supposed
do
to have
that.
the chips.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they could easily have picked up that cart and then put the chip in it.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's.
I guess I'm just we're just bonding for $500,000 that we don't need. We've
And
got the
all I
stuff
was
out
trying
there.
to make the point is that in every case, you're absolutely right. Rebecca's got it right. And if somebody was coming in just plain and they weren't set up, that's the only reason you could see that it would make any sense at all on the Juenemann side.
So let's take a look at our next part of our clip. We're coming down to the tail end of the show.
Right.
Rebecca?
Just a few questions and to the council here.
And this is what
talking
we
about all
learned
the different
already.
usages. And I know last time when we were talking about this, one of
So, we must have went back a little further, so we want to move ahead. So we'll move ahead there. And in the end, when they came to the end of the workshop, and because keep in mind, you can't be taking a vote at a workshop. That's one of the rules. You're not supposed to be taking a vote at the workshop. But they always test the water to try to see what is that general consensus without taking a vote. Well, that general consensus was 3-2 not to purchase carts, for the city not to purchase carts. And so Rebecca Cave, Marv Copen, and Bob Cardinal seemed to be the three council members that were leaning towards the city staying out of the cart business, although I would have to say that it was Rebecca Cave that was the most vocal about it, the most eloquent about it, and the two other dudes, they just kind of followed along.
Well,
it was pretty easy for them to do that.
But you can't give them credit for voting
Well, yeah.
the right way.
They didn't vote. They took a poll.
Oh, the poll.
They took a poll.
Hey, but remember.
In the field, they test the water, and the water was too hot.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. So anyway, let's see if they've got our clip ready.
Control the vendors also. I think we did too much of that with the garbage when we went to a single hauler, and I don't want to see us doing that again with the recycling. So I'm against having the city pay for this.
We should be in charge. They shouldn't.
Okay, now
Okay.
that
You have something, Bob?
was a great clip. You've got Rebecca Cave saying, we should not be involved in buying these carts. And Kathy Juenemann saying, but we won't be in control.
Well, she likes that.
If you're going to, like I said, if you're going to do like a refuge district, organized trash, you lay out the parameters and you put in the RFP what the parameters are and let the companies fight it out.
Yes.
And that's how you really get the best deal. Because I was listening to someone else. They were saying, you can save money by, ganging together to do like a trash hauling district. But you lay out the parameters and, like I said, you let the private sector fight it out and see who gives you the best deal based on what you're looking for. That's what, to me, what never happened here. This nonsense that we've got to control everything, you're going to be building warehouses just to throw all the junk that you bought because you want to control everything. It's like instead of buying police cars from Ford, we're going to start up our own manufacturing facility and build our own cars. That doesn't make sense.
If you remember the movie Young Frankenstein, Kathy kind of reminds me of Frau Brooker in there. Remember her? I'm in control.
Yes, yes. Well, here we are already at the end of our Citizens Reporter. So I want to thank our viewers for tuning in again this week. We'll have some more information, new news next week. And thanks, both of you gentlemen, for being here on the program tonight.
My pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. And, of course, you can always get a hold of me on Facebook. I'm there 24/7, so if you got ideas, or let's say you want to come on the Citizens Reporter, let us know. We want to hear from you.
That laugh track's going to be expensive.
Show up at the studio. We'll bring you on.
So anyway, we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.
You can't make policy when you're looking straight ahead, when you're working your jaws, when you're refusing to look at each other, when you're rolling your eyes, when you're curling your lips, and all your other various behaviors. I'm sorry to do this. It makes me sad. Please believe me. But I am begging you.
Okay.